Afternoon. Yeah, it's afternoon. Good afternoon to the media. Just an injury update or squad availability in relation to our status. Yeah, it's still the same as we had moving into the previous match. But we've still got one more session, which is tomorrow, to assess the possibilities of some of the other players returning. So in relation to that, there's no real update with regards to new players being available for the match against Stellenbosch.
All right, colleagues of the media, I will take the first question just by a show of hands, and you'll be recognized. Mazola, you can go ahead.
Thanks, Fatu. Afternoon, coach. My question is just around, obviously, being a cup game. Are you looking to rotate a bit more? Obviously, mindful of your CAF and league schedule, and obviously the squad that you have. For instance, a player like Ricardo Goss, highly rated. Obviously, a lot of people saying the goalkeeper of the bio bubble, but obviously hasn't played much for Sundowns since joining. Is it an opportunity for him and players like him who've not really gotten the minutes? Thank you.
Thanks, Mazola. Yeah, we don't have a standing principle in relation to squad rotation. I think at this moment in time, one of the most important things for us, and maybe even for a lot of teams, is a little bit more consistency with regards to the lineup. So team cohesion can improve, the communication can improve, and what I call cohesive superiority. You try to have the same players in a couple of games to get this consistency, because the reality is because of the circumstances and the time we are in with regards to society, it's very difficult to have the same players on the pitch in consecutive matches. But we will see how the squad presents itself and try to analyze the situation. And of course, because we have a team that's got so much quality with regards to its depth, even though we may look to give opportunities to other players, the most important thing is to make sure that we continue to build momentum. We continue to work towards improving our cohesion, our rhythm, our telepathy, and try to develop what I term cohesive superiority, because that's very, very important in a season like this.
Let's move on to Mark Lesson.
Thank you.
Afternoon, sir. I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, do you find that there is a change in tempo when you go into a cup week like this, subconsciously or consciously, that players, the tempo goes up or it goes down? There's a different kind of focus. I mean, for us as journalists, it's also a little bit of a different breather, you know, from the humdrum of the league week in, week out. Now it's a whole different thing. Is that the same for you as coaches and players?
Good afternoon, Big Mark. Good question. I think it depends on the mindset of the squad, and also the culture. And unfortunately, the culture at Mamelodi Sundowns is that every game is important, regardless of who we play. At the beginning of the season, we set ourselves certain targets and certain principles. And one of the principles was take each game as it comes, focus always on winning the next match. And of course, we know we can't win all the matches, but if we focus on trying to win all the matches, one match at a time, regardless of the portfolio, that is really our focus. And in this moment, we try to focus on Stellenbosch, who we know that in the last 5 matches, they've had only 1 win out of 5, which was against TTM. They've lost 2 and they've drawn 2. But a very good draw against Kaizer Chiefs, where they dominated and created a lot of chances against the big side. And the result against Black Leopards was a good point for them in relation to the battle that they face towards the mid-table, bottom half of the table. So a team that is we know is very strong. We know it is very difficult to break them down because of the formation that they play. And we know we've got to work extremely hard in relation to playing against a PSL side in the Nedbank Cup, because we would have loved maybe to play probably a weaker side, but the reality is it's a PSL side, it's a strong side, well-coached side with a very strong tactical structure that allows them to use the players that they have to their strengths. And let's see what happens. The opportunity itself, the fixture itself doesn't give us any some form of room for complacency.
Thank you, Coach. Karabo? Karabo there. Okay, let's move on to Tsepo, ENCA.
Thanks. Thanks, Fatu. Afternoon, Coach.
Afternoon, Karabo.
In terms of, I know, Coach, a team like Sundowns is obviously used to playing as many games as possible, but how different is it now, especially with regards to COVID? I mean, I think if I'm not mistaken, the team is playing a lot of games now every week in and week out. How are you coping with that, and also the players? How is it affecting the team at all?
Yeah, of course. And as I alluded to earlier on, football has a lot of dynamics, and you play certain matches within a match and try to get advantages in certain areas of the pitch. And then from a collective perspective, you know that the team that has what we would term as coaches qualitative superiority. Sometimes the match is decided on individual brilliance. Last night you see Barcelona, how Suarez, Messi make the difference. And then you win the game based on what we term qualitative superiority. But then when the quality is evenly matched, and of course, or the gap between the two sides from a quality perspective is not so large to influence a result, then you're looking at this cohesive superiority, which is a team that's got more communication, or better communication, a better rhythm, better consistency in their lineup, and they've got this telepathic understanding. Sometimes that's what gives you the advantage. And when you don't have the opportunity to play the same lineup game in and game out, of course, in a season like this, it counts against you and the development of your team in relation to going through good patches and going through bad patches, because that's when the character and the personality of the team develops even further. So when we went through a little bit of a slump with 3 draws, we couldn't have the same players going through that slump, but we went through it as a group, as a club. Unfortunately, then you still have players that are in isolation, and then the connection from a social perspective in terms of getting through the moment together, feeling the pain of not winning matches in 3 matches in a row, doesn't allow for the character, the personality of the team to develop as quick as you would like. So that's the disadvantage. Is you would like to see, like every other squad, you'd like to see the squad going through good moments like we've gone through, but also go through the difficult moments together, so that you can develop the dynamics within the group, the character within the group, and develop then the profile of the team a little bit better. And then you move into, of course, what maybe in hindsight is an advantage of COVID in relation to the rest that certain players get. And it's been beneficial for players like Nascimento, who would probably play consecutive matches, and he's got some time off. Rivaldo's got some time off. So you've got to take the pros and the cons. The pros being that you get a little bit of time to refresh the squad, to give some players some regeneration and rest period. But at the same time, you also lose a little bit more from a tactical perspective, and more than anything else, also from a social perspective, where it becomes very difficult to develop the group and the profile of the squad.
Okay, let's move on to Rob Delport.
Coach Rob Delport in Cape Town. You did kind of touch on it, but how much of your tactics have been dictated by the availability of players? Because obviously you've played a few players out of position every now and then, and with that, how nice is it to see some of these guys coming back?
Yeah, I think I think with the squad that we have, first it's a blessing, because with the depth that we have, we really don't look at a playing model. We can't. It becomes very difficult. And I think even if you look at the rest of the world, maybe apart from a team like Leeds, who I think have been very consistent with regards to a game model, and Bielsa is very rigid with regards to that. But even Manchester City have adapted their way of playing. Liverpool have had to adapt their way of playing now after a couple of results, because they haven't had centre backs, and they've had to adapt the different players to transform into centre back positions, and then it then allows them, or forces their hand of the coaches to adapt. Real Madrid, Barcelona, these big teams, Bayern, these big teams are now moving away from being teams that orientate themselves in relation to game models, because then the game model is in relation to the personnel. But now teams are moving towards creating a tactical culture, and the tactical culture is driven by game principles, and the game principles then need to be carried by whichever players are in the pitch and adapted to the profile of the players. So instead of the game model being influenced by your selection, now your selection influences your tactical culture. And teams are now moving from game models, and because of the space that we are in, also we have moved a little bit from saying this is the Sundowns way of playing, and we are moving into this is the Sundowns tactical culture, because we keep the culture, we keep the principles, but we train in relation to what is available, and try to use the players that we have in relation to the next opposition, because it becomes very difficult. For an example, we've played now teams that play with the back three and wing backs, and Stellenbosch play in a similar fashion as Bloemfontein Celtics. They've got the same sort of structure, but with a little bit more of a different build-up, and then it influences your situations of high pressing. How do you high press against a back three? We've just come out of a game where we've played against a team that doesn't have a back three, but has a back four. How do you then press against a team with a back four? Do you press with your strikers, your midfielders? Do you then put pressing traps on the wide areas? These are things that are part of our tactical culture. How do we then build from the back? Do they press with a two? Do they press with one? And we've seen how important a player like Dupree's is in relation to their press. And where do you try to find the spaces in relation to the opposition? So each opponent gives us different questions, and then because of those questions, we adapt what we want in terms of our playing principles and the playing outcomes that we'd like to see on the pitch. So that in itself also allows you to give opportunities and give full trust to the players that are coming in, and to the depth that you have in the squad. So in this moment, they haven't let us down, and they've carried the responsibility very, very well, and you've got to only compliment the squad for that.
All right, going back to Mazola.
Thanks, Fatu. Coach, no Mavarara this year, no TUT. A lot of people obviously bemoaning the fact that the Nedbank Cup has lost that FA Cup feel. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's nostalgic, because last year we had situations where we would ask for a team like Mavarara, to be honest. But of course, without that, as you say, you lose a little bit of that element of giving, particularly these players that don't necessarily get the platform to introduce themselves to the country. When probably their only platform, ABC Motsepe League teams, SAB League teams, they use the Nedbank Cup to showcase their talents and introduce themselves to the country. And unfortunately, because of how we stand, being in the middle of a pandemic, and in relation to amateur football, unfortunately, that opportunity has been taken away. The reality is that it's a fantastic platform, and hopefully next season we can continue with regards to giving these players from amateur levels and semi-professional levels an opportunity to introduce themselves to the country and use the platform to get better contracts, better teams, and showcase their talent so they can improve their lives and improve and help the development of the country, because then the pool of players that are then moved into professional level, it becomes bigger and better, and it can only mean that South African football improves a lot in relation to how we scout and improve the quality of players available for professional teams. So unfortunately this year we lose that aspect, and that's probably for me the biggest aspect that you lose. You lose the opportunity, if I can call it opportunity for the professional teams in terms of scouting and recruitment, but also the opportunity for some of these young boys coming from rural areas and coming from underprivileged backgrounds to be able to give themselves an opportunity to play against big teams, to play on a bigger stage, on TVs, and use the platform to introduce themselves to the country. And I hope that things settle down, and next season we can reintegrate these teams from the lower levels back into the framework.
Thank you, Coach. Mark, is your hand still up, or is that the old hand? Mark, listen.
Mark's hand is up. Mark's hand
sorry, I missed that. Sorry, say that please again.
Do you have your hand is still up? Do you have another question, or is that the old one?
No, it's an old one. I'm a techno peasant. I apologize.
All right, no problem. Coach, the last one will be from Karabo. He sent it via text, and he says, can you please ask the coach how big of a signing is Rushin and how he has looked at the few training sessions?
Yeah, I think, good. It becomes very difficult because I see a lot of people saying he's a replacement for Madisha. Very difficult to replace Madisha. Very, very difficult. I don't think we will replace Madisha. And I don't think Daruk is in his own qualities and with respect to the profile that he has. I don't think he views himself as a replacement for Madisha. I think if you look at Madisha's profile already by 23, which is something you don't get in this country, he had already played Club World Cup. He had already played CAF Champions League and won CAF Champions League at the age of 23, something that you don't get in this country. And that extensive sort of experience, not just with regards to club football, but also with international football, being the only captain in South Africa to captain a national side in Russia and win a trophy, and with that experience and with that quality, of course, losing a player like that, it becomes very difficult to speak about replacing someone with that pedigree. And may his soul rest in peace. And it's a huge loss for us, not just from a technical perspective, but also from a human quality perspective. They didn't come any better than Ace, and we've got to move on. But Durek has come in. He's got very, very good qualities. We've seen with him at Maritzburg, although the way of playing at Maritzburg, of course, under different coaches has been slightly different. He is a centre back that is adapted to the model of play of Sundowns. As I mentioned before, that at times, because of the culture that we go into certain matches with, then we speak about, do we high press, and that then says our centre halves must keep a high line and be brave enough to deal with the situations of defending with 30 meters, 40 meters behind them, and he's got the qualities to be adapted to that sort of philosophy or that sort of profile if we adapt to that. And at times, maybe we are forced to reinforcing, going to zone 2 or even to zone 1, and then is he a player that can defend in the red zone? Of course, you can see that at Maritzburg, particularly under Eric Tinkler, when they were really a transitional side, he was a player that could deal very well with the space in front of him and sit in a lower block, but be able to bring the ball out from the back and initiate counterattacks for his side. So we've done our homework. We've looked at the profile of the player, very strong aerially in his duels, and comparing him to the rest of what we would say the best centre backs in the country. 1, 2, the best centre backs at Sundowns, all the other centre backs at Sundowns, and then comparing him to the international norms and what we've formulated as key performance indicators globally in relation to how we want to play. Then those KPIs have shown that we've got one of the best centre backs in the country, and a centre back that with his age has a lot of potential. Unfortunately, he hasn't started training with us. There was a lot more paperwork that needed to be done, a lot more medical examinations. He comes from some form of medical problems when we got him. He had an injury prior to him playing the previous match for Maritzburg, and other medical issues, and we had to make sure that we are very thorough in our assessment in relation to that, and get his medical history. And we couldn't take chances by just inducting him into the squad without being very thorough with our processes, particularly at this time of the program that we are in globally in relation to the COVID situation. So, yeah. We are excited. We are happy that he's joined us. Very multifunctional. Can use what we call his ambidextrous sort of player. Can use his left, can use his right. Very good in his aerial duels. Very good on his one-on-one situations in terms of defensive duels on the ground. Has really very good defensive data in relation to all the other centre backs in the country. So we feel we've got a very good prospect, and a player that upon meeting him and doing our research is a very humble boy, and is a boy that shows that he's got a coach of humility and coachability, which is very important for us. We're bringing players that we feel are good human beings. And when you have a squad of 33, 34, it's very important that apart from the technical, tactical, and the physical profile of the player, you also do a bit of psychological research, and it shows that we have brought in a player that is willing always to just be part of the collective and serve the group, and that's very important for us. Good human beings make good football players, and that's what we think we have with Rushin.